Well, g'day everyone. This week I thought I'd stay away from the Chevy and do a video on my Plymouth Duster. I bought this Duster back in 2017 in California, actually at the Pomona Swap Meet. And the story goes that, I walked across the front of this car earlier on in the day and really didn't think anything of it. It didn't look like this. It had a different grille. It didn't really tickle my fancy. But later on in the day, not long before we were leaving, a friend of mine said, "Come on, let's go for another walk." I was tired, and if you've ever been to Pomona, the place is huge. So I walk across the last few rows where we were, and I see the car from this angle. Well, it stopped me in my tracks. Now remember, it didn't have stripes on it like the photo I just showed you, but this giant quarter panel really caught my eye, and I really did like the way the tail lights were. I looked at it and thought, I've never seen a Duster from this angle, or really never concentrated on looking at a Duster from this angle. I fell in love with it. I negotiated a price with the fellow. I believe the fellow's name was Ron, but I've lost contact with the bloke, lost his phone number. Anyway, I purchased it, and 5 weeks later, it was in Australia. And there began the changes I wanted to make to this car. So when I purchased the car, it had no stripes on it, no stripes on the back. It did not have a black hood. It did not even have these wheels. It had giant wheels on the back of it and had some little front runners on the front. It was a bit of a drag car. It had a roll cage in it, no back seat, a fuel cell in the boot, well, what they call the trunk. The battery was in the trunk. It had a electric fuel pump that made a hell of a lot of racket. Now, one of the cool things about this particular car is I got to drive it around California for a little while. And once that was done, that's when we took it to the shipping yard and got it shipped over to Australia. Now, one of the first things I did with this car was change the scoops. It didn't have the right scoops on it. I mean, what's right, what's wrong? I mean, if you really look at this car, it's all kind of wrong. And it didn't have this grille. I really like the shark tooth grille, and because it is a 1971, to me, it had to have a 71 grille on it. Now, after I've changed the grille and changed the scoops, I actually wrapped the bonnet and then put those stripes there on it, just to see what it would look like. I really liked it, so I decided to get it all painted. That's paint, that's not a sticker. Now, I know it's not kind of right, and there's supposed to be a gap between here, and if I paint it this way, it's kind of meant to have this bit painted as well, and there's a few other things that it's supposed to have when you do this blackout, but I just liked it with the hood blacked out, just like that. Then I saw one of these little lip spoilers, and I'll put a link to the fella that I got it off. I do know his name was Randy, but I cannot remember the actual name of his business. I really dig it. I got that imported over as well and threw that on, which was incidentally really, really easy to do. Now, while I was over in California, I visited Classic Industries and purchased this wing as well. So it's period correct and year correct to this car. There was 2 different types that went on the Dusters, but I really wanted the right one. Well, another thing I had to do before putting the rear stripes on was fix the beaver panel. The beaver panel had a hole here where an isolator switch was, and I welded that up and got that back beaver panel repainted. Then went ahead and put the stripes on and the proper Duster decal, which I made myself, and it's done in reflective vinyl. Well, moving along, I changed the wheels. It had some really nice wheels on it, and I actually bought some brand new ones of exactly the same wheels, just in a different size dimension, so they fit a little bit better, because I did go ahead and just put these BF Goodriches on it. But in the end, just went with the factory wheels. I really liked the factory wheels, and I imported those as well the following year in 2018, and had to get them modified to fit the car. It's got 8s on the back and 7s on the front, because this car doesn't have a Duster diff in it. it's out of a satellite. Still an 8 3/4, but just not the right size. So therefore, the back rims, they kind of didn't fit right. And I think they stuck out a little bit. I think I had to get them pushed in a little bit. Oh, I can't really remember, but anyway, that was one of the things. So stepping backwards a little bit, this car was not a manual when I bought it. The funny thing is I told my wife I'd bought this bright yellow car and to expect it to turn up, and I wasn't there the day it actually turned up at the house. And as it's sitting in the driveway there, or on the grass actually, my wife says, "Why have you bought an automatic? I would have thought you'd buy a manual." You know, I wasn't too fussed on it, but she was right. I really did want a manual. So the next thing to do was find a manual conversion. Now, I did look for a standard manual conversion or a factory manual conversion, but in the end I decided to go with a TKO 600 with a 5-speed, more of a late model box. It shifts better and all the rest. Well, I believe it does anyway. And I've got an extra gear for the highway. So then I got the conversion shipped over and fitted all of that. Now, I've done a video on the conversion, and I'll put a link in the description so you can have a look at that if you want. Now, another thing is, when I bought this car, it didn't have a back seat. I just went to the wreckers that's local to me and just found a seat that kind of fit in there and got it all retrimmed. And with that whole retrimming, did the whole car in the end, because these aren't the original seats that came in the car as well. Remember, it had a roll cage in it and completely different seats. Completely different door trims or door cards, and had grey carpet in it as well. And of course I had to cut up the floor to put the TKO 600 in. Well, it all needed new carpet as well. So with all the trim done and all done in black, it was time to redo the dash. The dash had a yellow fascia here and it had odometer gauges all through it. I didn't like them. Got rid of that and went with DVO, I think it is, at first, but I was copping a lot of glare from the gauges and decided to go with these Dakota digital ones in the end. They're pretty expensive, but they work really, really well. I'm really happy with them. Another thing I went and did was change the steering wheel. So as you might have guessed from the stickers, the engine's a 360, and under the hood here is a 360. I've put on some Mopar Performance valve covers. I put on my own sticker here for the air cleaner. Made a little sticker for the aluminium radiator, and I relocated the battery into the engine bay. I also put a booster on it, MSD ignition, and got the wiper washers working. I put the correct bottle there and put all the jets up in through there. I put a black MSD 6AL on it, and lastly, the correct alternator. It's certainly nothing flash under there, but I think it looks pretty cool. There you can see the big giant holes from the original scoops that were on it. So these kind of work. Well, I guess you'd say they actually do work. That's not working. Yeah, anybody that knows what that is will know that's kind of irrelevant once the MSD's all in. But I like the look of it and I've left it there. Oh, I do want to say, one thing I had to do was, because the scoops here were kind of in the wrong position to the way the original ones are supposed to be, I had to move them back a little bit. From memory, yeah, back a little bit. If you look there, that's the original positions, and my scoops sit back a little bit and in a little bit. But you know what? On the car, you'd never know. So another thing I want to add is this fuel cap. Now, I know that's the wrong fuel cap for a Duster, and well, this didn't even have a fuel cap on the quarter panel when I purchased the car. Like I said, it had a fuel cell in the back, and you just pop the trunk here and you filled it up from the back. Well, here in Australia, you can't have that. Well, not at least if you want the car registered properly. Therefore, needing engineering because I've changed a lot of things on this car. The gearbox, the diff's not the right diff. And to do all that, you've got to have fuel that can be put in from the side. And well, that proposed another problem. With the tank in the boot, or the trunk, it had to go and had to be remounted. Well, had to be mounted underneath the car with a side access or rear access or whatever, but side access for filling. Now, what I've done here is probably a bit blasphemous for some people, but that's out of a Mustang. Now, I think I've done a video, and if I have, I'll put a link in the description as well for that and what I did. But it does work, and it works fine, and here in Australia, it's all legal. Now, another thing to say about this vehicle, when I bought it, it was all powder-coated silver underneath. And it did look trick, but it wasn't my thing. I took the diff out, I repainted it black, and when I did the TKO conversion, well, I had to get a new tail shaft, blah, blah, blah. So, you know what, it's mostly black under the car now. And that 8 3/4 has a 3.5 to 1 diff ratio in it. I also put a set of QA1 shocks in the rear and QA1s in the front. There's that TKO 600 under there. And when I did that, I had to change the exhaust as well because it was hitting. So I think that was the 3rd time I changed the exhaust, but this one's here to stay. I really dig Mopars, how they hang down low. I think it looks really cool. I guess the last few things I want to say is I never thought I'd own a yellow car, but here we are, 6 years on, I still own a yellow car. I think Dusters look great in yellow. Best part about this yellow is it's a proper Chrysler yellow. When I had this Beaver repainted, when they colour matched it, yep, came up as a Chrysler colour. Well, take care, and hopefully I'll see all you guys on the next one. See yous!